Welcome. I'm Hannah Beasley, and I'm with AARP Foundation, and we are very excited to have you join our last webinar in this series that will be hosted by the National Consumer Law Center. As you can see here, we are really focusing on student loan repayment strategies. So with that, I will turn it over to Anna and Kira to kind of introduce themselves and kick us off. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. My name is Kira Taylor. I am a student loan expert at the National Consumer Law Center, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. Today, we're going to be talking about student loan repayment strategies, but Anna and I have done a 5-webinar series on all aspects of the student loan system. So everything from your cancellation options to what to do when your loans are in default to just an overview of the student loan system at large. So really excited that you're here today, and I really hope that you check out our other webinars as well. Anna, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself too.
Yes, hi, I'm Anna Anderson, and like Kira, I'm a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, where I also work on student loan issues. Before we get started, I just want to quickly flag for people that we will have time for questions at the end, but if you have questions while we are going through the training here today and the session here, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A feature of the Zoom and not in the chat. I will do my best to follow along and answer questions as we are going throughout the presentation, but we will also reserve time for the end for questions, although please feel free to go ahead and use the Q&A feature and ask them at any time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. So with that, let's dive in. Now, I'm really glad that you all have come to join us today because I know that student loan repayment options can be confusing. It can feel like a very complicated board game of if-thens. If I do that, then this follows 2 steps later. And it's just overwhelming for a lot of folks. Today, our goal is to demystify your options and explain upcoming changes in student loan borrowers' repayment options. As always, we're going to provide a lot of education about your options. We will not be able to provide specific legal advice to you about your own loan situation, but we will have resources about where to find legal help if you need it at the end of this presentation. Today, we're also going to focus on federal student loans, and that's because it's the types of loans that most borrowers have, and because for federal student loans, the repayment plan options are in law. So it operates differently from private student loans. You can see the first webinar in our series to learn more about the differences between private and federal student loans as well. So today, we're going to talk about the repayment plans, the ins and outs, how they work, and how you should think about your repayment plan options. We're going to walk through the repayment options you have for loans for your own education. This is very important because Parent Plus loans, the loan that you may have borrowed to pay for your child's college education, have different repayment options. We're going to talk about other student loan news, and we're going to talk about resources. Throughout, we're going to be talking about the big bill that passed in July that will change borrowers' repayment options in the future. All right, so let's start with the basics. First of all, just again, policymakers really didn't make repayment easy. When they identified a problem, they often provided a future-looking solution and ignored people in the past that had that problem. So what this means is that there are many different types of federal student loan repayment plans, and they have different eligibility criteria based on when you borrowed, what type of federal student loans you have, and more. We're going to go over all of that today so you have a sense of what loans you may be eligible for and what the differences are between the different plans that you may be eligible for as well. Big picture, as you're watching this, we're going to talk about the rules that govern each of these plans and the ways in which they're different. But I want you to come to this presentation with 3 main things. There are 3 things to consider when you're selecting a plan. First is, can I afford my monthly payments? And when I say, can you afford your monthly payment, there's one, can you afford the actual payment? Can you make the payment? And second, can you afford the monthly payment while you're paying for other important expenses like medical expenses, food, etc. We don't want you foregoing your rent, your medication, etc., to pay for your student loans. And so that would be a reason to consider switching plans. Another question is, how do I want to manage my debt? Am I aiming to pay off the debt, get it forgiven, or pay the smallest amount possible over time? Some plans result in you paying off your debt entirely in as few as 10 years, while other plans give you more time to pay off your debt. And then still other plans provide for cancellation after a specified amount of time in repayment. Now, you may be hearing me and saying, but Kira, well, I have to pay off my debt. Not so. Federal student loans, unlike other types of debt, are discharged tax-free when the borrower dies. So it's perfectly reasonable to say, I just want to pay the lowest amount of time until I pass, and the student loan obligation will not be passed on to your family members after you pass away. Last important question is, am I pursuing public service loan forgiveness, which is a cancellation program for folks who work in nonprofit and public interest employment? We've talked about this in past webinars. We have a webinar on the different statutory discharges that talks a little bit more about public service loan forgiveness. The really important thing to be aware of for today's presentation is that you can only accrue public service loan forgiveness eligible time if you're in the income-driven repayment plans that we're going to walk through today, or the 10-year standard plan. So that's really important to be aware of as well. Now, most important, I just want to reiterate this, is can you afford your monthly payments? It is really important to stay current on your federal student loans because defaulting on federal student loans can have really devastating consequences on borrowers. The government can seize a portion of your Social Security check. It can seize your tax refund each year. It can seize a portion of your wages and more to collect on defaulted outstanding federal student loan debt. If you're curious or if you are in default on your federal student loans, you should check out our webinar on how to deal with default and get out of default that we did in August. Now, there are 3 common repayment strategies for older borrowers that Anna and I often hear about from folks. The first is some folks are just like, I can afford to pay it off. I'm going to pay off my debt. And so that is what they're aiming for. It does not offset or create hardship in other areas of their life. So these are folks who are not sacrificing medical care, food, housing, et cetera, to pay off their debt. So that is a legitimate strategy for your student loans. Another strategy that we hear about from older student loan borrowers is that folks are just looking for the lowest possible payment for the rest of their life. They accept that they're going to have a minimal payment. It's easy for them to handle. And then when they pass, they'll anticipate getting their loans discharged via a death discharge, which is tax-free and won't pass on any continued obligation on their loved ones. And then the other one is for folks to get their debt canceled as quickly as possible. So these folks are looking at the statutory discharge programs and they're looking at the repayment plans that offer cancellation after a specified number of time in repayment. Anna, anything else you'd like to add here about repayment strategies for older borrowers in particular?
Yeah, one thing that I just want to emphasize here is that it's very common for people who are aging with student loan debt to just sort of be at the point to realize that they will never be able to pay off the loans. And while some folks may be pursuing ways to get their debt canceled, either through the income-driven repayment cancellation program or through another program like the disability discharge program, some folks may just have to deal with the fact that they're going to be paying on these loans for the rest of their lives. And they may be looking for the least amount possible to pay each month. And that is entirely okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that is something that is very, very common. So I think if you're going into this sort of saying, well, if I can't pay my debt off, I'm going to be stuck forever, that's not actually the reality that we live in. And this is the very common strategies for managing this and being okay with that. It's not typically how we think about other types of debt, like credit card debt and, like a mortgage. It's a little bit different, and that's just because of the reality of the amounts that folks have to pay off and also the options you have for sort of having this debt long term. So as we're going through this, if you have any questions about that specifically, please let us know. But this is very common for a lot of folks who are aging with this type of debt to deal with.
I will also say you don't get any gold stars for paying off your debt is the other piece. So it's really a question of what makes the most financial sense for you and your family. So with that, let us continue on and start to get into the nuts and bolts of the various plans. So there are two big groups of plans. There are fixed repayment plans, or plans that are designed to pay off your debt, and there are income-driven repayment plans, or plans where the monthly payment amount is based off of your income. So again, the fixed repayment plans, you're not looking at cancellation. These are often more expensive, but they're going to pay off your loans by the end of your repayment period. There are a couple of different types of fixed repayment plans, which we're going to go over in just a sec. Now, income-driven repayment plans are not based on the amount of debt that you owe. It's based on how much you make each year. So they're based on your income. That also means that when your income goes down, your payment amount goes down. A really big thing about income-driven repayment plans is that the outstanding balance on your loans is canceled after 20 to 30 years of qualifying repayment. And the other piece is these plans count towards public service loan forgiveness. So let's start with the fixed repayment plans, in part because the fixed repayment plan, one of them is one of the default plans that you would be entered into if you didn't pick another plan. So let's start with what happens in terms of your repayment journey when you first borrow a federal student loan. So first, the loan is going to be automatically put into the standard repayment plan, which can also be called the level plan when it enters repayment. The standard repayment plan is a fixed repayment plan, meaning that the payments are designed to pay off your loan within a specified period of time. Generally,
Kira, we lost your sound. Oh, it's back.
Thank you. So I'll just repeat, the standard repayment plan is a fixed repayment plan, meaning that the payments are designed to pay off your loans within a specific period of time. Generally, it's a 10-year repayment period for loans that you borrowed to attend school yourself or Parent Plus loans. Now, because of the big bill that passed in July, if you take on a new loan or consolidate after July 1st, 2026, the standard repayment period will be longer. It would go for 10 to 30 years based on how much you owe total. Consolidation loans operate differently. The standard repayment plan that they're automatically put into has a 10 to 30 year repayment period based on how much you owe for that consolidation loan. So that is a little bit different. Now, for a lot of folks, the standard repayment plan is not affordable. So there are going to be other repayment plans that you should listen for that may be more affordable depending on your loan situation. That could be another fixed repayment plan. That could also be an income-driven repayment plan, and we're going to go over all of it together. Let's talk about the other fixed repayment plans, the other plans that are designed to pay off your debt. The first is extended fixed repayment. So on this plan, borrowers have a fixed payment, so a fixed monthly bill over a 25-year repayment period, and at the end, they will have paid off their loans. Now, to enroll in this plan, you must owe more than $30,000 in either FFEL or direct loans. Now, if you're like, Kira, I don't know what type of loans I have, that's okay. We talked about this in the first webinar we did in this series, and we have a shorter video on how to figure out what loan types you owe in the links here. Graduated repayment is another type of fixed repayment plan. And on this plan, it's still designed to pay off your debt, but the payments will start low and increase every 2 years. The repayment period is generally 10 years, and it's longer for consolidation loans, so 10 to 30 for consolidation loans. Folks get surprised on graduated repayment because they forget that the monthly payments are going to increase every 2 years. And then the last plan is extended graduated repayment, which is a combination of extended and graduated. And here your payments increase every 2 years, but there is a longer period by which your loans will be paid off. So a longer period that you would be in repayment. And again, to enroll in this plan, you have to owe more than $30,000 in either FFEL or direct loans. Now, really important flag. Because of the big bill that passed on in July of this year, you won't be eligible for these plans if you take out a new loan or consolidate your loans after July 1st, 2026. So this is really important to remember if you're thinking about going back to school, if you have Parent Plus loans, which we're going to talk about later, and also if you're thinking about taking out a Parent Plus loan for your children. You should know that you will lose access to these plans if you take out a new loan or consolidate after July 1st, 2026. So those are the fixed repayment plans. Of these, if you're looking to pay off your loan as quickly as possible and with the least amount of interest, the standard repayment plan is going to be your plan. You're going to want to try to stay in that plan. Mind you, that will likely be some of the highest payments as well. So you may struggle with affordability, but it will pay down your loan as quickly as possible. Some downsides I want to flag about these fixed repayment plans is that they can be really unaffordable for borrowers from month to month. In addition, they don't count towards payments in extended, graduated plan, and some standard plans don't count towards income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness. So if eventually you want to switch to a cancellation plan, the time spent in these plans would not count towards cancellation. In addition, payments in graduated plans, like I mentioned before, increase significantly over time, which surprises borrowers with unaffordable bills. All right. Next, I want to talk about what is often a much more affordable, what are much more affordable repayment plan options, especially for older borrowers who are living on fixed incomes, and that's the income-driven repayment plans. They've got three big benefits. So first, the payments are based on your income, not the outstanding amount of debt. Your payment can decrease when you tell the government that your income has decreased. That is huge. That is a huge financial safety net for folks. And third, after 20 to 30 years of making payments, depending on your plan, the government cancels your outstanding debt. So that is also a huge benefit for folks. In addition, these plans are also eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts because there are multiple IDR plans and each have different eligibility requirements. But one big thing to be aware of here is that only direct and FFEL loans are eligible for income-driven repayment plans. If you have Perkins loans, you're going to need to consolidate those loans so that you can enroll them in an IDR plan. And again, if you don't know what type of loans you have, you can check out a short video or that I have linked here or our longer webinar on the different types of student loans that exist. In IDR plans, the government bases your monthly bill off of your income, which is based off of your adjusted gross income or AGI and your family size. You can find your AGI on line 11 of tax form 1040 or EZ 1040. And the huge thing about IDR plans, about some of the plans, is that if your income is low enough, you can have $0 monthly payments. So you're still accruing time towards cancellation, but you don't have to pay anything. In terms of enrollment, you can enroll in an IDR plan by logging into your account on studentaid.gov or sending in an application form to your student loan servicer. We have the links to both the application form and where you go on studentaid.gov at the end of this presentation. We also have a video on where to find things on studentaid.gov in a short self-help video as well. One really important flag for you, and one reason why this training is so important, is that when you enroll, you have to know what plans you're eligible for and which plan you want to enroll in. Now, if you don't know which plan has the lowest payment, you can call your loan servicer and they can help you choose. We are also going to walk through some online tools that would help you compare payments in different plans as well. Another important thing about IDR plans is that you must recertify your income and family size once per year. You can and should recertify more than once per year if your income goes down or your family size increases. And there's no requirement to recertify more frequently if your income increases. The only obligation is that you recertify your income once per year. Next is that when you reach the required number of payments, which is 20 to 30 years of payments, depending on the plan that you're enrolled in, any remaining loan balance will be automatically canceled. Now, one big change to flag is that as of January 2026, amounts canceled via an IDR plan will count as federally taxable income. You'll have to work with a tax professional to manage or decrease that tax bill. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard all kinds of things on the news about how student loan repayment is changing and how student loans are changing. Now, it's true that the big bill passed on July 4th does change what repayment plans borrowers will be able to use in the long run. That's true. The law ends some of the existing income-driven repayment plans, keeps some of the plans, and creates a new one. And we're going to talk about all of that in just a second. But the most important thing to know here is that there will still be income-driven repayment plan options moving forward. IDR plans will continue. We're going to walk through all this, what will stay, what will go, as we walk through each of the different plans as well. All right, so let's break down the different types of IDR plans. These are the plans. You've got income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, income-based repayment, saving on a valuable education, and the repayment assistance plan, the newest repayment plan. Oftentimes when folks are talking about these plans, they'll talk about them by their acronyms. So that's why you see ICR, Pay, IBR, Save, and WRAP in parentheses there. Now, you can't enroll in all of these plans right now. Today, you can only enroll in these 3 plans. So we're going to walk through all of the criteria of these plans. The SAVE plan is one of the newest and most affordable plans, but it has been challenged in court. And because it's been challenged in court, folks cannot enroll in these plans today. And the Repayment Assistance Plan, or WRAP, is the newest IDR plan, but that will only become available in July of next year. So we're going to talk about all of these so you know what your options are, but it's really important that you know that you can only enroll in the ICR, Pay, and IBR plans today. Okay, so with that, we're going to start walking through your repayment options for your own loans, because again, Parent Plus loans have different rules, and we're going to go through those separately. We're going to walk through the eligibility on each of these plans first, and then we're going to walk through how the government would calculate the monthly bills and then cancellation, so that you have a sense of which plans you're eligible for and which plans you'd be most interested in. So we're going to start off with income-based repayment, or IBR. Both direct and FFEL loans are eligible for income-based repayment. I want to flag that the big bill changed the eligibility requirements. There used to be an additional requirement on income-based repayment. So if you applied for IBR in the past and were denied, you can reapply. Next, we have the pay-as-you-earn plan. In the pay-as-you-earn plan, only direct loans are eligible, and only if the borrower was a new borrower after 2007 and took on a new loan after 2011. So if you were a new borrower, that means you didn't have outstanding loans in 2007, and then you also have to take on a new loan after 2011. In addition, you have to have what's called a partial financial hardship. And what this means is that if you are a high earner with a small amount of debt, you are likely ineligible for the pay plan. And then last, we have income contingent repayment, ICR, and direct loans are eligible for the ICR plan. And again, to find out what types of loans you have, because that will in part determine which plans you're eligible for, you can see our videos. Next, let's talk about monthly repayment amount in each of these plans. So for income-based repayment, it turns on whether or not you're a new borrower or an old borrower, and the turning point is July 1st, 2014. So for new borrowers who had no outstanding debt on July 1st, 2014, or paid off their debt after that point before taking on another loan after July 1st, 2014, the monthly bill is 10% of the borrower's income. And again, that's their AGI, which is line 11 on Form 1040, Tax Form 1040. So 10% of income above 150% of that borrower's federal poverty level for your family size. For the old borrowers, or folks who took on debt before July 1st, 2014 and still had it outstanding on July 1st, 2014, it's 15% of your income above 150% of the federal poverty line for your family size. Now, I want you to note it's above 150% of the federal poverty line for your family size. If you make less than that, that's a $0 payment. That's great. Next, we have the pay-as-you-earn plan, and that's 10% of your income above 150% of the federal poverty line for your family size. And then last, income contingent. This is going to be the least generous plan, which is 20% of your income above 100% of the federal poverty level for your family size. Anna, I'd like to pause here for a second for you to chime in about these plans.
Yeah, I think right now it's really important to know as many folks are also thinking about the SAVE plan and what's happening there, and they were really benefiting from the low payment amounts on the SAVE plan. To just remember that these plans too do offer affordable repayment options for many people. And in a lot of cases, some of the folks that we work with will be eligible for a $0 a month payment. And that means that you don't have to pay anything. You are on a qualifying plan. You're not going to be in default. You're not going to have any credit issues as a result of that. If the government determines that you're eligible for a $0 payment, that's absolutely something that would be very beneficial to folks and would count towards qualifying time for cancellation. So I know Kira's going to go over that next, but I really just want to emphasize how generous these plans can be for many people, and that is a big thing to take advantage of right now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna. And so next I want to talk about cancellation, because on one hand, you're thinking about the how affordable the plan is when it comes to monthly repayment amounts. And then the other piece is, when do I get my loans canceled? So an income-based repayment, it again turns on whether or not you're a new or old borrower based off of that July 1st, 2014 cutoff. If you're a new borrower, you will get cancellation after 20 years. If you're an old borrower, you would get cancellation after 25 years of qualifying repayment. For pay-as-you-earn, it's 20 years. And then for income contingent repayment, it's 25 years. You may have heard that cancellation in pay and ICR had been, the government had said that it was not going to do it because of some of the litigation that's been going on. They recently announced that they have restarted cancellation, but really the two plans you should be watching out for in terms of cancellation right now are folks who are in the old IBR plan, because you could be at 25 years of qualifying repayment today, and the income contingent repayment plan. This is because of when these plans started and the eligibility criteria. In pay-as-you-earn, because you have to be a new borrower as of 2027, cancellation won't become live for those folks until 2027, which is 20 years after 2007. So this is all to say you could get cancellation now if you're at 25 years of qualifying repayment in old IBR or income contingent repayment. Now, like I flagged before, some of these plans are going away. So let's talk about it, because that may influence which plan you want to enroll in. So income-based repayment will continue to be available to existing borrowers who do not consolidate or take on a new loan after July 1st, 2026. So I want you to remember, like, you may have to take steps before July 1st, 2026 to ensure that you have the best repayment options available. Pay-as-you-earn will end by 2028, and income contingent repayment will end by 2028. This is something to be aware of. You may still, if pay is more affordable, if you're eligible for pay, that may be the most affordable plan you may choose to enroll, and then just budget and anticipate that you would have to switch to a more expensive repayment plan later. So even though they're ending, you might still choose to enroll in those plans now. But for most folks, for many folks, they will choose to enroll in IBR now because they'll know that they can continue to be in that plan after 2028. Now, Anna, you flagged before that folks may have some questions about the SAVE plan. So let's talk about the SAVE plan altogether. So first thing is that the SAVE plan is the newest, most affordable IDR plan that was created during the last administration. There are nearly 8 million borrowers who are currently enrolled, and I imagine some of you today who are watching are currently enrolled in the SAVE plan. Like I mentioned before, the plan is currently being challenged in court, which led the Department of Education to stop borrowers from enrolling in the plan. So you can't enroll in this plan today, even though it is much more affordable than the other IDR plans I just went over. Borrowers that were already enrolled in the plan have been put into an automatic forbearance, meaning that they don't need to make payments while the forbearance is ongoing. Now, a couple of notes about the forbearance. The forbearance began accruing interest on August 1st, 2025, this year. The forbearance does not count towards IDR cancellation or public service loan forgiveness. And the department is not providing IDR cancellation to borrowers in the SAVE forbearance, even if they would be eligible for cancellation in the ICR or old IBR plans. So that is something to be aware of. We also don't know how long the court case or the forbearance will last. And regardless of what happens in court, the big bill, this bill that passed in July of this year, requires that the SAVE plan will end by July 1st, 2028. So those are some pretty big contingencies. And if you're in the SAVE forbearance, I think it's a perfectly reasonable option to choose to switch into one of the other plans to look at what your payment would be and then decide whether or not you can afford that right now. And even if you decide that you want to stay in the forbearance because you don't have to make payments, you should figure out a backup plan for when SAVE ends. So what will your payments be in the other IDR plans, and start budgeting accordingly for that as well. Now, as if that wasn't complicated enough, there is a new IDR plan that is very different from the other IDR plans that's coming in July 2026. This is the RAP plan that was created by the big bill. So for the RAP plan, only direct loans are eligible, no Parent Plus loans. And one huge difference is how monthly payments are calculated. So in RAP, there is no protected income. So no matter how far you fall below the federal poverty guidelines, nobody is eligible for $0 payments. Everybody must pay a minimum of $10 a month. And then what your monthly bill will be is a percentage of your income. So it's a different percentage based on your income bracket. You can see it here in this chart. And if you have dependents, the government will subtract $50 from your monthly bill. But everybody will have to pay a minimum of $10. And I know that for low-income people, $10, that is a big ask. That can be a trade-off between food one month, eating or not. And so this is a big thing to be aware of because, again, if you take on a loan or you consolidate your loans after July 1st, 2026, that could change your repayment options. But also another thing to flag is because the formula here is very different in that there is no protected income, you will have to figure out, is RAP more affordable for you or less affordable than the other IDR plans if you are above the federal poverty guidelines in the previously mentioned IDR plans. Forgiveness in the RAP plan is significantly longer. It's 30 years. But there are some benefits to RAP. So interest not covered by the monthly payment is waived. So that is significant. And there's a principal match if your payment doesn't cover up to $50 of your principal, which would mean that your balance, your overall loan balance would decrease over time. So those are some pretty significant differences from the other IDR plans. So here we have all the plans. We've walked through how they're different, eligibility criteria, calculating monthly payment amounts, cancellation, and I would not be surprised if you felt like the great Patu bird and are just feeling like, whoa, this is a lot. Because it is a lot. So let's talk about how you can pick which repayment plan is best for you. So first is just running the calculations. So what would your monthly payments be in all of these plans? In IDR, graduated, extended, all of these things. You can look at the loan simulator on studentaid.gov to get an estimate of what your payments would be on each of the plans. They will not provide an estimate for the RAP plan, which again, you can't apply for now. It will only become available in July of 2026. And so I have another calculator for you that's linked here where you could see estimates for what your payment would be under the RAP plan and confirmation because we've heard that sometimes the loan simulator on studentaid.gov is not fully accurate. And so you can get a check on those estimates as well. You should also consider the repayment length before cancellation on the plans. So this is something else that's significant. Pay and new IBR have the shortest time to cancellation, and RAP will have the longest. And then again, those fixed repayment plans, standard, extended, and graduated, don't have any cancellation that are a part of them. So you might think about that. Even if your payment is a little bit higher in old IBR, you might still consider staying in old IBR because you want to get to cancellation after 25 years. You don't want to wait that 5 years for the RAP plan. So these are all things to consider. And then last, you should consider whether or not you care about the possibility of an increasing balance. If you don't, which again is fine, you don't get any gold stars for paying off your federal student loans, then some of the existing IDR plans may be more affordable and more appealing to you because they may have a lower monthly payment. But again, you're going to have to run the calculations on the loan simulator on studentaid.gov and on the other website that we flagged here to just have a sense of what your monthly payments will be on all of these plans. Anna.
Yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize the fact here that for a lot of folks, being on IDR is going to be a really good option, whether or not you're pursuing cancellation on IDR, or if you're just like, I just need the lowest amount possible so that I can just keep living with this debt as long as I can. That is really a good option here for a lot of folks, particularly folks who need to use their funds for other things in their daily lives, such as, rent or mortgage payments or medical expenses, which we know are becoming a real big issue for folks. So if you're having those other sort of financial issues and you need to sort of prioritize in your student loan debt, what is going to be most important? Paying off your student loan debt, it may be one of those things that you just have to realize that may not be a possibility, and that's okay because the government does have these other options available to you so that if you're not in a place where you can pay off that debt, you can at least live with it in a payment that would be more affordable, that would also have no negative consequences. So that's just something we really want to make sure people are aware of because it is different than other types of debt, such as credit card debt or mortgages or medical expenses.
That's right. I also wanted to come back to the fact that you can't enroll in all of these plans today. So you can only enroll in income-based repayment, both old and new, pay an income contingent repayment today. The repayment assistance plan will be coming online in July 1st, 2026. And you can switch enrollment in the plans. The time that you accrue in one plan will count towards cancellation in the other plans. Now, one important flag here is that you will only be able to enroll in IBR, pay, and ICR if you do not consolidate or take out a new loan after July 1st, 2026. So things are really going to change on July 1st of 2026. And just because I know, I just want to make sure this is loud and clear. I hope you put it on a Post-it, put it on your computer, put it on your fridge, that July 1st, 2026 is a really important deadline in student loan world. Because if you have even a single loan issued after July 1st, 2026, you will only be able to pay off all of your direct loans in the new standard plan or in the RAP plan. And like we talked about before, RAP does not allow folks, even very poor folks, to have $0 payments. So this is a significant change from where things currently stand when it comes to borrowers' repayment options. So I really want you to remember that you may have to act before July 1st, 2026. The other important thing to flag here is that if you consolidate your loans, the consolidation loan has to be dispersed before July 1st, 2026. So you would need, if you're thinking about consolidating, you need to submit that consolidation application as quickly as possible to make sure that the loan itself is dispersed before this deadline. One other flag, one other thing that can derail folks is that if you're enrolled in an IDR plan, you have to remember to certify or update your income once per year. You can do that on studentaid.gov or using the paper application, both of which are linked at the end of this presentation. You need to do it. There's a deadline by which you have to do it each year. To know what your deadline is, you can check with your servicer. After the payment pause, recertification deadlines were pushed back for folks that are currently in IDR plans. So it's really important to check with your servicer about when that deadline is. But the governing rule is once per year. So please make sure you do that, because if you don't recertify, it can mean that your monthly payments would increase. All right, so there are your repayment options for your own loans for your own education. But I know many of you here likely have Parent Plus loans or loans that you took on to pay for your child's college education. And like I flagged before, your repayment options could look very different on your Parent Plus loans than they would for loans for your own education. So Parent Plus loans are not eligible on their own without taking additional steps for an IDR plan unless they're consolidated into a new direct consolidation loan or FFEL consolidation loan, if you consolidated before 2010. A direct consolidation loan, however, is the only type of consolidation loan containing a Parent Plus loan that is eligible for an IDR plan. And the only plan that they're immediately eligible for is the ICR plan. Now, if you remember, ICR is the least generous IDR plan. It used to be that if you did what's called a double consolidation, you got one consolidation loan or two direct consolidation loans, and then you consolidated those two direct consolidation loans together, then you would be eligible for more plans. That's why this has an asterisk. Those folks at times had success getting into a different IDR plan. I will flag if you have a double consolidation loan, the big bill does radically change your repayment options. So please pay close attention. Now, the big bill changes things big time for Parent Plus borrowers. Because of the big bill, Parent Plus loans borrowed or consolidated after July 1st, 2026 will not be eligible for any IDR plan. So that July 1st, 2026 deadline is critical. To make Parent Plus loans eligible for IDR plans, there's a ticking time bomb here. Borrowers must consolidate Parent Plus loans before July 1st, 2026. So that's the first deadline. You need to make sure those Parent Plus loans are consolidated before July 1st, 2026. And the second deadline is that you have to enroll the consolidation loan containing Parent Plus loans in an IDR plan before July 1st, 2028 to keep those plans in an IDR plan in the future. This is really important. We have the links to how to consolidate your loans at the end of this presentation. But it is really important. If you have Parent Plus loans and you want to enroll them in an IDR plan, you need to move quickly to consolidate those loans because, again, the consolidation loan has to be dispersed by the Department of Education by that July 1st, 2026 deadline. Here's the other thing to be aware of because of the changes in the big bill. If you take on a new loan or consolidate any loans in the future after July 1st, 2026, that would make your Parent Plus containing consolidation loan ineligible for IDR plans moving forward, even if you met the July 1st, 2026 and the July 1st, 2028 deadlines. Anna, I know that this is confusing, and I know that you harbor as much anxiety about this as I do for folks that have Parent Plus loans. So I would love to turn it over to you to share some additional wisdom with folks.
Yeah, so I think that one thing that I'm seeing is folks are, really concerned about everything that is going on. But also, I'm hoping that you can just sort of explain what exactly is a consolidation and what does that mean here when we're telling people that that might be something that you have to do in order to be eligible for these new, for an IDR plan or even going forward for a new type of repayment plan.
Great question. So when you consolidate a federal loan, it means that you're taking on a new federal loan that pays off your existing federal loans. So you can consolidate just one federal loan, or you can consolidate multiple federal loans together. That is what you would need to do. So you're going to take these Parent Plus loans, you're going to borrow a new direct consolidation loan to pay off those Parent Plus loans, and then that direct consolidation loan is eligible for IDR plans, whereas the Parent Plus loans would not be.
And this is a really wonky feature of the student loan system. Unfortunately, For Parent Plus borrowers, this is not something that is really easy to understand, but it is something that is required in order to become eligible for an IDR plan if you have a Parent Plus loan. If you don't have a Parent Plus loan, you may not need to do a consolidation. But again, if you have a Parent Plus loan and want to get an IDR plan, before you do that, you have to do the consolidation. And you have to be aware of the big July 1st deadline that is coming up in 2026, because that could also change all of your options going forward if you don't meet that deadline.
Yep. I will also flag that if you do not have Parent Plus loans, you should be very careful about consolidating. You may not want to consolidate your non-Parent Plus loans because if you consolidate non-Parent Plus loans, you could lose the IDR plan eligible time that have accrued on those non-Parent Plus loans. So this is really a flag just for folks that have Parent Plus loans, and this is really just about consolidating just those Parent Plus loans to ensure that they would continue to have access to an IDR plan in the future. Now, like I mentioned before, previously a direct consolidation loan containing a Parent Plus loan was only eligible for the ICR plan, but the big bill changed that as well. So borrowers that consolidate their Parent Plus loans before July 1st, 2026, and enroll that direct consolidation loan in the income contingent repayment plan, the least generous IDR plan, and then they can enroll that direct consolidation loan into the IBR plan, which is significantly more affordable. But it's a two-step process. You would have to enroll first and make a payment in ICR, and then you would have to reapply for IBR. But it's worth doing because, like we were talking about before, IBR could be much, much, much more affordable to you based on when you took out your loan. So let's sum up. Biggest things to remember. First, a good repayment strategy for older borrowers could be paying the lowest amount possible and not paying off your loans. Federal student loans are canceled when the borrower dies, and that discharge is not taxable as federal income. The repayment plan you're in now may not be the most affordable plan available to you. Like Anna was talking about before, IDR could be much, much more affordable for you, especially if you're on a fixed income, especially if you have a lower income. Under the IDR plans, you must recertify your income once per year, and IDR plans are changing, but there will continue to be an IDR option. I will also add here that the older IDR plans that allow for $0 repayment will not be available to you if you consolidate or take on a new loan after July 1st, 2026. And then critically, for folks that have Parent Plus loans, the clock is ticking. You need to act to make sure that those Parent Plus loans can be enrolled in an IDR plan in the future. You need to consolidate those Parent Plus loans before July 1st, 2026. And you need to enroll the consolidation loan in an IDR plan before July 1st, 2028. And then you need to not take out any new loans or consolidate any loans after July 1st, 2026 to make sure that that consolidation loan is eligible for IDR plans in the future. Anna, any other takeaways that you want to flag for folks?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway here is there's a lot of confusion around who needs to consolidate and when it's a good option. So right now, I would say that if you don't have Parent Plus loans, you should actually be really careful about consolidating your loans. And that is because not only will that potentially change your options going forward if you don't do it by the July 1st deadline, but also it could potentially reset the credit that you already have toward IDR loan cancellation. And that could be a huge issue. Let's say if you've been paying on your loans for 20 or 25 years, you're getting close to that cancellation time. If you consolidate now, you may lose all of that credit, or you may lose a big chunk of that credit. So you want to be really, really careful. If you don't have Parent Plus loans, you should be really careful about thinking about consolidating. There are still good reasons to consolidate, but it's not necessarily something that you have to do if you don't have Parent Plus loans to sign up for an IDR plan right now. And it's not necessarily something you have to do in order to get IDR cancellation if you don't have a Parent Plus loan. So I just want to make sure that that is really clear for folks, and that they know that if you're going to consolidate now, there could be huge consequences for you. Additionally, emphasizing for Parent Plus borrowers, if you have Parent Plus loans, that consolidation deadline for you is different, and it definitely needs to be something you need to be thinking about now, particularly if you're not already on an IDR plan. If you already are an IDR plan, then that means that you must have at some point consolidated your loan and done that, right? So you only need to take this step if you're not currently on an IDR plan, and you haven't already consolidated those Parent Plus loans, and you want to stay on an IDR plan going forward, because after July 1st, that option is not going to be available to you.
Yes. So I'm going to repeat this one more time on it because this is a lot of detail and it's a lot to follow. So first, we're going to talk about folks that don't have Parent Plus loans. If you do not have any Parent Plus loans, you may be just fine. You likely don't need to consolidate your loans at all. Okay, so you would need to think very carefully before consolidating because there are downsides to consolidating if you don't have any Parent Plus loans. So if you don't have any Parent Plus loans, you don't need to worry about the 2026 and 2028 deadlines. If you do have Parent Plus loans and you have not consolidated them into a direct consolidation loan, then you will need to make sure that you consolidate them before July 1st, 2026 and enroll that direct consolidation loan before July 1st, 2028. If you had a Parent Plus loan and you consolidated it and that loan is enrolled in an IDR plan, then you don't need to worry about these deadlines and you're okay. When you consolidate, you should also you may only consolidate those Parent Plus loans because there are downsides to consolidating non-Parent Plus loans right now.
So, Kira, this is a lot of information.
Yes.
And we are going to be providing these slides after this presentation so that you can go back to review to them. But I know that you have other tips and resources that you want to share with folks, that we will be getting to in addition to our Q&A section. So if folks are feeling overwhelmed right now, trust me, we understand. And that is why we are doing this webinar, just to get this information out there. But it is not the only resource that is out there to help you figure this out. And NCLC does continue to provide this type of information in a variety of resources ongoing to help you figure this out. So please definitely stay connected with us as well. And I know Kira is going to explain some other resources and other things that you can do to make sure that you are understanding everything that you need to do with these big deadlines looming.
One big one is that you may need additional legal help. You may need the assistance of a lawyer to look at your specific loan situation to help assess whether or not you're eligible for statutory discharges and to help you figure out which repayment plan to enroll in. So it's okay if you're watching this and you're like, I can't figure it out. You should reach out to your local legal aid organization to see if they can provide you with additional student loan help. You could also reach out to a private lawyer that does student loan law or a nonprofit financial counseling organization that deals with student loan debt issues. They could also be a significant help here. We have a link here on how to find additional legal help as well, because it is a lot. I mean, I feel like my internal face is the face of the patoo bird, oftentimes thinking about all of these options because it's a lot of if then. And so you are certainly not alone in all of this. In addition to talking about the repayment plans, I also wanted to flag some other student loan news for you as well. So there are a couple of other big bill changes that I wanted to put on your radar. So in addition to changing borrowers' repayment options, the big bill also changes lending limits and changes how much Parent Plus borrowers can borrow per child as well. The big bill will allow borrowers to use a rehabilitation agreement twice to remove their loans from default starting in 2027. And the bill excludes total and permanent disability discharges and death discharges from federal taxable income indefinitely. And Anna, you did a fabulous webinar on total and permanent disability discharges in addition to other statutory discharges earlier in the cycle. And so that is linked here as well. If you're saying, oh, wait, I have a disability that is permanent and prevents me from working, that you should definitely check out. Another question I imagine many of you have is, the government is shut down. How does that impact me with student loans? Sometimes I hear from student loan borrowers that they think they don't need to make payments. No, during the shutdown, you still need to make your payments. You can still start accruing time towards default, even if the government is shut down. So please make sure that you stay on top of that. However, if you submit an application for a statutory discharge, it may take longer for that application to be decided. So just be ready to wait a little bit longer. In addition, there are new rules on public service loan forgiveness coming soon. It is likely those new rules will be challenged in court as well. So if you hear about this in the news, it is just something to be aware of here. And then, like Anna flagged, we have a lot of additional resources as well. So we have important links for you on where you should go on studentaid.gov, the online IDR application. We have the link to the past webinars that we've done with the AARP Foundation. That will be tremendously helpful for you as you're thinking about your other options with your student loans beyond just repayment. Here's some more important links. We have a student loan video series that are short videos that explain different parts of the student loan system that are really helpful as you're trying to get your head around, what does it mean to be a student loan borrower? What kinds of loans do I have? What are my options? And then we also have an incredibly helpful student loan toolkit that has checklists and also explains different aspects of the student loan system as well. Anna and I and our team here at the National Consumer Law Center also publish the Student Loan Borrower Assistance website. This is a website that is designed for borrowers and to help them figure out what their student loan repayment options are, and also for where you can find the latest news on student loan repayment changes as well. I recommend that you subscribe to our blog to get up-to-date and accurate news about how things are changing when it comes to student loan law. And then last, if you have other types of debt, we have a book called Surviving Debt, which covers student loans and more. And that is available online at our website, nclc.org. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Anna, I'm sure folks have a lot of questions. This was a tremendous amount of information.
There are a lot of questions and a lot of really great questions. So I want to dive into all of those questions, and I'm going to try to, we answered a number in written format, so please refer back to those, but we have over 25 open questions. So I do want to make sure we get to as many of these as possible, but I'm going to try and group them a bit for you, Kira, so we can tackle them in a way that also makes sense for everyone as we're going through these. So first, a lot of folks had questions about the federal poverty income guideline and how to figure that out. So I just want to state that the guidelines and the levels are actually set by the federal government. So the Department of Health and Human Services sets these levels, and they do that annually. Sometimes there are big changes in a new year. Sometimes they're not. They're pretty static. So that is actually available on the Department of Health and Human Services website. I did put the link in the Q&A to one of the questions that we got on this. We got a number of questions about this so that folks can actually find that information about what the current 2025 levels are. And again, these are based on your household size, income, and also based on where you live. Because for folks who are in Alaska and Hawaii, the levels are a bit different because it can be a lot more expensive to live in those areas. So that is that. And we hope people can refer back to that if they have questions about it. But what I will also say is that your loan servicer should be in a position to help you figure out, based on the information you provide them about your income, which likely will come from your tax forms that you have each year, to figure out what types of IDR plans you could be eligible for and what those payments would look like based on your income and your household size. So if you're feeling like, oh, I need to do all of this on my own and I need to really calculate this on my own, as Kira mentioned in the presentation, that's something that your loan servicer should be able to help you with. However, we know that servicers often get these things wrong, and they're human too, and there's a lot changing for their staff to keep up with. So Kira, do you have tips for folks who are working with their loan servicers, hearing different things from their loan servicers, especially about like what their repayment options are? Or what I've heard a lot of people say is, well, my servicer told me I had to consolidate, and now you're saying I don't. Can you give some tips about what folks can do to make sure the information they're getting from their servicer is accurate? And if they're confused or being told different things, what should their next step be? What should they do?
So my first thought is, I agree that sometimes student loan servicers get things wrong, but you can check what they're telling you by logging into your account on studentaid.gov and using the loan simulator, which will tell you an estimate of what your monthly payments will be in each of the plans. I would cross-check just to be on the safe side, what the payments will be using the second calculator that we provided as well. But the student loan simulator is a pretty good place to start, because it will tell you which plan, it will give you a sense of which plans you're eligible for, and also give you a sense of what your monthly repayment amount will be on each of those plans as well. In terms of consolidation, the big thing. So we emphasize Parent Plus loans. If you have Parent Plus loans, and you want to enroll them in an IDR plan, they need to be consolidated before July 1st, 2026. That means you need to submit a consolidation application quickly because we don't know how long it will take the department and servicers to disperse that consolidation loan. But the other type of loan that we talked about at the beginning of the call are Perkins loans, because Perkins loans are not eligible for an IDR plan on their own. They have to be consolidated first. If you do not have a Parent Plus loan or a Perkins loan, and you only have FFEL or direct loans, you do not need to consolidate those loans to be eligible for an IDR plan. So that would be the thing. I would look at the loan simulator, and I would see which plans and what the monthly payment amount is. And if they tell me to consolidate, if you only have direct loans and FFEL loans and they are not Parent Plus loans, then you do not need to consolidate to access an IDR plan.
And I would say also, if you have Perkins loans, you still should consider consolidating, particularly if you have other types of loans, direct loans that are in IDR that you've already been earning credit toward. Because if you do consolidate those together, you just need to be careful about what would happen if your IDR clock would be reset on your other loans. So if you have a Perkins loan and it's a small amount, but you have a lot of other direct loans that are a lot more that you owe on, and you've already at 15 or 18 years of credit towards IDR forgiveness on those loans, just be careful about what loans you consolidate together. It's really tough right now to figure this out. So if you need more help, definitely start with your loan servicer if you can. But as someone pointed out in the Q&A, it's really tough to reach your loan servicer right now. And if you can't, be, sure or certain that the information they're giving you is trusted, as Kira pointed out, try to reach out to some local help or some national help to get better assistance with these. We always tell people that you shouldn't, necessarily pay a counselor for help on your student loans. But if you can talk to a local legal aid organization, a nonprofit credit counselor that focuses on student loans, they may be able to give you some more detailed information and more guided help about your particular situation. And there are also private student loan lawyers out there that do take on these cases and can advise people in particularly complicated situations as they're going through this, because it is a struggle. And Kira, if there's anything that you want to respond to there, please go ahead.
No, I just want to reiterate, this is complicated. There are a lot of rules. There is no shame in needing additional help. And so I think it's really important to look to see, does your legal aid are you eligible for your legal aid? Do they offer student loan help? Do you have a local nonprofit financial counseling organization that provides student loan assistance, and to reach out for them to just get assistance? Because in addition to picking the best repayment plan, you may also have cancellation options that you're not aware of too. And they'll be able to help do a 360 view of your situation on your loans as well.
Some big resources I want to flag too is that your state may also have a student loan ombudsperson that is actually part of your state government, and their job in many cases is to help student loan borrowers navigate these issues. So if you're having a problem with a loan servicer, or you just don't know what your rights are, that is a good place to start. So check to see if your state has a state student loan ombudsman, and that would be through the state government. It depends for different states, what branch of government they're going to be within the state, but that is a really good resource. And in fact, in California and New York, there are also free services available to people with student loan debt to get trusted information from both credit counseling and from a legal standpoint as well. So legal aid providers and nonprofit financial counselors that provide services to folks in those states for free if they need student loan help. So definitely check out what is available in your state, whether that's a state ombuds or a local legal aid or a state-run program such as the ones in California and New York. And additionally, I will say that if you are still stuck, studentaid.gov has a lot of resources. They have a complaint center where you can file a complaint directly with them. We know that there have been issues with people hearing back from the Department of Education and the Federal Student Aid Office recently, given the shutdown and given also all of the layoffs that have happened there. But if you can't get your case or your issue resolved that way, you can also reach out to your local representatives. So your Congress, your representatives in Congress and it's your senator or your local House of Representatives folks will sometimes take these cases on themselves and will try to help you get those resolved. So that's another good resource. We provide a lot of information on how to access all of that on our website, studentloanborrowerassistance.org, which is in the slides. But again, there are just a number of avenues that you have to try to figure this out. And we want to make sure and emphasize that, like, at this moment, if you need help, definitely seek it out early because we know it's going to be so complicated for folks. Kira, there were a lot of questions about SAVE. And I'm hoping that we can spend a little bit of time going through some of those questions. So one of the questions I got was about what's happening with SAVE and the forbearance. And I thought that SAVE was interest-free. What's going on with interest and SAVE? I know people had questions about SAVE generally. I just want to start this off to say SAVE is being eliminated. That plan is going away. The big bill that was passed really is changing all the student loan payment options that are out there, and SAVE has to be eliminated as a result of that bill that was passed in July. Now, we don't know when the SAVE forbearance is going to end. It could end really at any moment. We hope to get notice of that and that borrowers would get notice of that, but we just don't have those answers. So I want to make sure that people know that the SAVE plan will go away. That is not something that is going to be saved because that was a question that got asked a couple of times. But for folks who are currently on the SAVE plan, who didn't know that they were on the SAVE plan, but are all in this weird forbearance thing that's going on, can you explain that a little bit more and break down what those folks should be thinking about right now?
Yep. So the Department of Education, because of the legal challenge, that is still ongoing. So the case is open in federal court, put borrowers who were enrolled in the SAVE plan into a forbearance. Initially, it was interest-free. This summer, the department announced that interest would accrue on the forbearance starting August 1st. So it is no longer an interest-free forbearance. Interest is accruing after August 1st of this year for borrowers in the SAVE forbearance. Now, common question, Anna, is the one you flagged about what should I do if I'm in the SAVE forbearance? And that is really fact specific to you as an individual. If you are not earning, if you have no income that would count as under your adjustable gross income on your taxes right now, if you have no income, if you're unemployed and you don't have any retirement income, etc., then you are likely eligible for $0 under IBR Pay, or ICR. So you could choose to enroll in one of those other plans, and that way you'd be enrolled in that plan for the next year for as long as your income is below 150% of the federal poverty guidelines. You would have a $0 repayment, or 100 for ICR. You would have a $0 monthly payment amount in the existing IDR plans. So that may make sense for you. If you are making income and you're above that threshold, then you need to decide what's best for you. You may decide that right now, because of the cost of groceries, medication, etc., caring for a loved one, that you can't shoulder even an IDR payment. And it's okay to choose to stay in the safe forbearance. The thing to be aware of is that you want to make sure you're checking every email from the Department of Education, every email or piece of mail from your student loan servicer, because like Anna mentioned, the safe forbearance could end at any time. So you're going to want to stay aware of that. You're also going to want to look at the IDR plans that you could enroll in right now to figure out what your plan B is. So what are you going to do when you don't have the safe forbearance available to you? So that would be the two things I would think about. But it really depends on your situation as a borrower and what your goals are and what is most important to you in this moment.
And also, Kira, a number of questions have come about how time in the SAVE plan is going to apply towards IDR cancellation. Can you explain that right now?
Yeah, so time in the safe forbearance does not count towards IDR cancellation or public service loan forgiveness cancellation. For PSLF, it doesn't matter if you're working for a qualifying public interest employer. That time will not count. So if you're really close to cancellation in the IBR plan, old IBR, or ICR, you are not accruing qualifying time through time in the safe forbearance. You would need to switch over to one of those other plans to continue accruing time and then get to cancellation. Same is true for public service loan forgiveness. You would need to switch to one of the other IDR plans, which right now you can only enroll in Pay, IBR or ICR, and only IBR will continue after 2028 to continue accruing PSLF eligible time.
And another thing that folks brought up is that, some folks did not realize that they were on the safe forbearance. And this was an automatic transfer, right? So everyone on the SAVE plan should have been placed automatically in a forbearance because of what's happening in the courts. So if you didn't know that, now is a really good time to check in on your situation and see if it still makes sense for you to wait out the forbearance, or if it makes more sense for you to switch into a different plan, whether that's an IDR plan or a standard plan or another type of plan. That is all something that we're encouraging everybody at this moment. If you take one thing away from this webinar today that you're like, what can I do right now? Go to your studentaid.gov account, look at what repayment plans you're in currently and what the status of your loans are, and think about, does this make sense based on everything that I've been told today? Should I stay in this repayment plan or should I consider something else? And also, if you go into your studentaid.gov account and you see that you're in default and you're actually not on a repayment plan, you should also take steps right now to address that as well. We discussed that in a previous webinar and we gave some information about what folks in that situation can do. We know that a lot of changes are coming to the student loan system next year, and now is just the time to get your ducks in a row, because after so many years of being on a payment pause and so many years of not having to worry about this, that is now ending for most folks. And now is the time to really think about what is going to be your best option, because if you wait too long, there's a chance that what was your best option is no longer going to be available to you. So take a look at that now.
That's right.
Okay, Kira, we had some other questions out there too. A lot of folks are saying that they have been in repayment for a really long time, but they may or may not be in an IDR plan. They don't know. Would it make sense for people who've been in repayment for a long time to sign up for an IDR plan now? What is their cancellation strategy going to look like? Are they going to get credit for any of that old time? Can you explain a bit about for those
Yeah.
folks, what their options would look like?
So if you were in one of the longer standard repayment plans, so anything beyond 10 years, if you were in the extended or graduated repayment plans or extended graduated repayment plan, that time will not count towards income-driven repayment, unfortunately. That being said, if you still can't afford if you're struggling with your student loan payments and you want to accrue time towards cancellation, you're thinking about cancellation eventually, you could switch to an IDR plan today and then begin accruing time. The distinction is I actually want to amend what I just said because during the last administration, this had previously been a significant problem. That a lot of folks like you didn't realize that they were in one of the fixed rate payment plans that didn't count towards cancellation. During the last administration, they realized that servicers were not providing folks with accurate information and did what's called the IDR account adjustment. And so you may have IDR eligible time that you accrued on your loans, even if you weren't enrolled in an IDR plan. That time was applied to your account in July of this year. And so you could call your servicer and ask, how much IDR qualifying time do I have on my loans? And they can tell you because that has already been applied to your account. And so even if you were in the graduated repayment plan, extended, etc., you could still have significant amounts of IDR qualifying time on your loans, and you may not have that much longer to cancellation in the old IBR plan or in the ICR plan, or pay. But again, that is coming later, or new IBR. But again, that's coming later. So that is really significant. Anna, I know I had a bit of a blind spot there as I initially began explaining it. So if you want to reiterate this just to make sure it's very clear, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this really complicated is that a lot of things have happened over the last few years in ways that have helped borrowers get more credit or get closer to IDR cancellation. And also things are changing in the future that are going to make it harder for borrowers to achieve this. So it is just super complicated. But that is why we want to make sure that each person, when they go away from this webinar, they look at their own situation and they have to think about what all of this means for their particular situation. Because for some people, some of these strategies are going to work, and that's the way that, is absolutely going to be the best way to move forward. But for other folks, choosing one particular strategy could mean that they have a lot of negative consequences that come about as a result of this. So just to recap a bit of what Kira said, even if you weren't ever on an IDR plan before, a lot of people got credit, like a retroactive credit from the previous administration towards IDR cancellation for time in repayment that they had previously been on. So if you were making payments on your loans for a long time, but it was just the standard payment, you may still have a good chunk of credit towards IDR cancellation, but you have to be on an IDR plan now, and it has to be an IDR plan that counts towards cancellation, so not the save forbearance, right? You have to be on either ICR, IBR, or pay right now to continue earning that credit. And when the new plans come out, the new IDR plans that come out, RAP and the new IBR, you will also, if you're on one of those plans, that time that you previously accrued will count towards your time on those new plans to reach cancellation. So it's really tricky. Some folks are going to be eligible for IDR cancellation at 20 years. Some folks are going to be eligible for IDR cancellation at 25 years. And if you're on a new plan, when the new plans come out, for some folks, it's going to be 30 years under the new RAP plan. So it's also tricky to figure out exactly what credit you have, when your time towards cancellation is going to come up for you. This is why it's really good if you can get individualized help from a trusted source who can help you figure this out.
Yeah. And the one flag about the IDR account adjustment is that really the only time that won't count is time in default. So if you had time in default, that did not put you any closer to IDR cancellation, but just about everybody else accrued additional time that wasn't previously eligible for IDR cancellation. And so even if you haven't been enrolled in an IDR plan, if you've been in repayment for a really long time and you haven't been in default, you should call your servicer and see how much IDR qualifying time you already have accrued.
And those IDR cancellations, when you reach that time where you have paid all of the payments required and what the plan that you're eligible to get cancellation. So let's say it's IDR and you're going to be at cancellation at 25 years. Once you reach that time and you've made your 25 years of payments, it should be an automatic cancellation. There's not an application you have to fill out. There's nothing affirmatively that you have to do to tell the Department of Education that you're eligible. It should be something that the loan servicer and the Department of Education identify you as eligible, and then it should come forward. Now, a lot of folks have been eligible for cancellation over the last several months, the last year or so, who have not yet received that. And that's because there have been challenges in the court that have sort of paused a number of things. There have also been delays on the Department of Education side. However, we have learned recently, as Kira said, that the Department of Education is now once again reviewing and issuing cancellations for folks in IBR, for folks in pay, and for folks in ICR. If you're on SAVE, you're not going to get the SAVE cancellation. That is one thing that I think folks have asked about. The SAVE cancellation is unfortunately not going to happen. SAVE's being eliminated. So if you want to try, if you've been in repayment for 20 years and you're like, oh man, I'm on the SAVE forbearance, it might make sense to look at your other options for IDR, because you may be eligible to get cancellation much sooner if you switch.
One other flag for folks who are very close to cancellation on old IBR or ICR, or are looking at pay cancellation in 2027, is that if you reach cancellation before the end of this year, that cancellation will not count as federally taxable income. If you get IDR cancellation at the beginning of 2026 or after, that will count as federally taxable income. So this is something else to be aware of. This is also why it's really important, just so you're not surprised by that cancellation and a surprise tax bill, to just call your servicer and see how close you are.
And I will say, so that tax bill doesn't mean that you're going to have a bill for the amount of the debt that was discharged. That's not how the tax system works. And there also may be ways that you can, waive potentially what you would owe on that tax bill, depending on your income. You definitely need to talk to a tax professional if you're worried about that. But for things like public service loan forgiveness and the total and permanent disability discharge program, if you get your loans canceled through that, there's going to be no tax consequences for you there at the federal level. Kira, lots of SAVE questions, but somebody asked, if I leave the SAVE plan now because it seems like a good option, can I re-enroll in that plan if I decide I want to go back into the SAVE plan?
You cannot. If you are out of SAVE, you cannot re-enroll. They are not.
And then will there be any sort of buyback time for the SAVE forbearance? This is a question a lot of folks are getting. Jen, can you explain what this buyback is? And
yeah, so during the last administration, when they were updating the repayment regulations, there were terms in both the public service loan forgiveness regulations and the IDR account. When they created the SAVE plan, that same body of regulations also created a system by which you could pay what you would have paid if you had been accruing qualifying time. So in public service loan forgiveness, the buyback plan works so that you can pay what you would have paid in a qualifying IDR plan. Same thing is true with IDR. The buyback process is still available for folks who are going for public service loan forgiveness, but only if you bought back that time, you'd be beyond 120 qualifying months, because that's the cancellation point with public service loan forgiveness. There is no buyback available right now for IDR cancellation, because that is also wrapped up in the litigation challenges that are challenging the SAVE rule. So complicated. It depends on what you're looking at there. The PSLF, so public service loan forgiveness, is separate than IDR.
Switching to a Parent Plus question. Someone asked if they have a Parent Plus loan now that's in deferment because their child is still in school. Should they come out of deferment and consolidate before July 1st, 2026? That's a great question.
That is a great question. And I think this all has to do with what your goals are, and whether or not you can afford repayments in the standard plan. So I think this is fact specific to you. I can't tell you one thing to do or not. I will say, if you can afford standard repayment and your goal is to pay down your loan, then you might not, especially if you don't want to make payments right now, you want to take advantage of that deferment. If you want access to an IDR plan in the future to pay off that Parent Plus loan, then you may want to pull that loan out of deferment, consolidate it before July 1st, 2026, and then enroll that consolidation loan in an IDR plan. I would say before you do any of this, you should play around with numbers in the loan simulator. For this, you should take for Parent Plus loans, when you're running them through the loan simulator, they will show up as ineligible for IDR plans. So here, if you're trying to figure out what your IDR plan options would be for a Parent Plus loan, if it were consolidated into a direct consolidation loan, I would not log into your studentaid.gov account. I would manually input the numbers. You don't have to log in to take advantage of the tool. I would manually input your loan numbers into the calculator. This is another place where getting specialized help from a financial counselor or a legal aid attorney would be especially helpful.
And another thing that I will say is that if your child's still in school and you're thinking about taking out new loans next year for when they're still going to be in school, that is also going to be, a big flag. If you take out any loans after, whether you consolidate them or you take out new loans after July 1st, 2026, your options for all of repayment are going to be different for all of your loans. So can you go over that one more time here just to emphasize for folks? So if they're still in school or they still have children in school, like what that means for their loans now versus like if they're going to take out loans in September of 2026.
Right. Okay. So the way that the big bill works is that if you take on any loan, either through consolidation, a Parent Plus loan, or a loan for your own education, after July 1st, 2026, it will change your repayment options for all of your direct loans. If you do that, if you take on new loans after July 1st, 2026, your direct loans will only be eligible for the new standard plan and the RAP plan. This is especially important for folks who are on a fixed income or are low income because the old IDR plans allow them to have a $0 payment that's still accruing IDR cancellation eligible time. Whereas the RAP plan has a required minimum payment of $10. And then if you're above the protected income in the IDR plans, then you have to just figure out, like in some cases, RAP will be better and more affordable. In other cases, the old IDR plans will be more affordable. The other significant flag is that this is true even for direct consolidation loans containing a Parent Plus loan. In the big bill, no direct consolidation loans containing Parent Plus loans are eligible for RAP or an IDR plan if the borrower takes on any loans, consolidates loans for their own education or Parent Plus education after July 1st, 2026. So even if you meet the deadlines, if you take on new debt after July 1st, 2026, that direct consolidation loan containing a Parent Plus loan will not be eligible for IBR, which is way more generous than ICR and will be much more affordable than other plans as well.
And in fact, if you are in that situation, the only plan you're going to be eligible for at that point is the new standard plan because you will not have access to RAP. So if you don't have Parent Plus loans and you consolidate or take out any new loans after July 1st, 2026, you're only going to be eligible for standard or RAP. Now, RAP, it still has loan cancellation after 30 years. It still has a lot of good benefits. It's still way more affordable for most people than the standard plan. But it is also going to be potentially worse than the IBR plan that you could stay on if you don't take out those new loans. So for either scenario, whether or not you have Parent Plus loans or you're going to take out Parent Plus loans, or if you just have loans for your own education, you have to be really careful when you're thinking about what you're doing after July 1st, 2026, because your options are going to change no matter what. And then particularly for Parent Plus borrowers, it's tough. So I will say we are at time. We didn't get to all of the questions and it's very complicated. But I would emphasize to folks, please stay in touch with the National Consumer Law Center. We have a website, studentloanborrowerassistance.org, where we have been posting updates on our blog that you can actually sign up to get sent directly to your email so you can get practical tips about what to do now as things are changing, as new issues are coming out. Kira put that info in the chat. Please make sure you stay connected to us because again, This is what we know now, and more changes could be coming in the future. And it's really critical to stay up to date on all of those changes. And it's a lot of work, Kira. It's a lot of work to stay up to date on this. So we appreciate you all being here and working through this with us. Kira, do you have final thoughts?
My final thought is that, again, there's no shame in needing help with all this. There is a lot of legal complexity. As lawyers, I will tell you, Anna and I also do training for lawyers that get very confused by all of these rules. So again, you are not alone. So if you need additional help, please look and see if you have additional help available to you in your area that can help walk through all these really complicated rules. Also, you can always view this webinar again. The slide deck will be sent out to you. And like Anna mentioned, Student Loan Borrower Assistance just has a wealth of knowledge, and we're continually updating it to reflect all of the ongoing changes as well. So please check it out. Please subscribe to our blog for updates. And thank you so much for joining us today.